Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Yellowstone, the last two episodes of season one. Having a story arc of a thing, because it's a two-parter with the same title being called for each one, called Unraveling, which by the end of the episode, we start to actually see John's family really just start to unravel within two episodes, or unravel. And so, kind of within these two episodes, they gave me everything that I wanted. It was like was it Christmas? Was it my birthday? So really, I have no real complaints about this. Plus, I also figure or realize that because he said it in the episode that John evidently is to be the person who is to be the livestock commissioner, and so if I were to have said commissioner before, I didn't even know what that really meant until it's like, oh, he's a livestock commissioner. I'm like, oh, okay, so cattle and stuff like that. So interesting. So in episode 8, we are to get this kind of this flashback episode, which now, if I were to have said, yeah, I really want an episode where they kind of go more in depth about Rip, they kind of start to do that in these episodes. Plus, also, it seems that in these two episodes, Jamie is to have his own story, so nothing that I can really complain about here. And if I were to have complained about this show whatsoever, this show doesn't deliver this show doesn't seem to have a filler episode. There's so many stories going on that it never feels like there's a time where a episode feels like a less than kind of episode, but it's just kind of getting more kind of easy to understand and so on and so forth compared to the pilot of this episode, that's the only real complaint that I have about this, is just the pilot just goes into these legal precedents, but I've said that too many times. So but yeah, so I'm enjoying this show, and if people want me to go on to review the second episode, I will happily do so. Depending on, because I think it seems like a lot of people are interested in the season one of this, so definitely I want to greatly thank everybody and appreciate the fact that people have listened in upon these videos. I know that some of them are quite a bit long because I like to go further in depth, and plus I also bejokingly want to go and take my own time to do and say and whatever. So with that said, we also are start to introduce characters or make certain characters more prominent more. But we're also speaking of introducing characters, it seems that right off the end of this season, we introduce a girl named Avery, who is to have been this this dancer, let's just say this club dancer, let's just say, because trying to be nice, who goes on to be with the guys and is to be on the ranch. And the fun thing about this, because we have the show Rescue Me with Dennis Leary and so on and so forth, where they introduce a female into their department, and so there's that whole going and looking the girl up and down and be kind of moment where you have the guys that are trying not to do that, but they're always just good God, I'm tested. Why did this happen? Why did this have to happen on me on this day? So the interesting thing here is John was on the last episode to go on and shed some blood in a toilet in another episode, but they don't go on in these other two episodes and say what that is. Just so that way we can clear that up. And because the interesting thing is that John is to consistently say in these two other episodes that he probably doesn't have any time left. And so Rip is saying, like, well, like, did you go to the doctor? Like, did they tell you something? And John's like, you know what, I'm sick of doctors. I don't want to go to doctors anymore. So it's like, so are you willing to die? Because the weird thing is John is saying, like, at the tail end of this season, he's to say, I'm not going anywhere. But he's also not going to the doctors. So there's this weird, goofy thing where John is to basically say that he is, I guess, to live forever, I guess, now, which is, I hope he does. And, but there is this one just perfect moment that John is to turn to Rip and is to say that he's working so hard on this ranch to possibly leave it to no one. Or possibly leave it to some stranger, because what does it transpire here kind of leaves us with John just feeling that he's going to have to just live forever so that this ranch will still be in his family. So, yeah, that's kind of how we go within this episode. So, if we don't have like a heartbreaking moment with Casey in these two episodes, because they seem to kind of pull back on the whole Casey thing and now have started to like put together some other stories finally. No offense to Casey, story. I know how challenging a show to write is. I completely understand that. Plus, also a freaking ranch show and a show where everybody's consistently on horseback and all kinds of things. Show. There's probably a lot of people that are just like, God, like, even with this being like a very mini series like approach, like, I'm sure everything to go and do on the show is very challenging. It's a very complicated thing. So I would definitely give this show praise for how complicated that they have made this show, but also very enjoyable that they have made this show. For having to put a show like this together, which like, look at the shows like The Ranch, the Ashton Kutcher show, The Ranch, where like they probably wouldn't go into this kind of scale or scope of things, but this show does this and is to, of course, put something so fascinating to a bunch of people. So that said, I think, yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to cover here. Beth is to have a more prominent role, basically pretty much being Jamie's role in these two episodes, and we'll find out why within reviews. So, without further ado, I am going to go into this double 5 time territory. It'll be interesting to see where certain characters head by the next season, especially with how they kind of leave certain people hanging, either metaphorically or you could probably figure it out. So without a doubt, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time again to spoil these last two episodes. So, in episode 8, we are to have a flashback of young Rip. So, Rip is to be waking up in some house where it seemed like there is quite a bit of house with blood upon it. And I was just like, am I watching Yellowstone? Like, it just caught me, the way that episode 8 begins, like, catches me off guard. And I'm like, am I sure I'm watching Yellowstone? Like, am I watching like, I have to recheck now. So Rip is, I guess, having to deal with his father because his father is to go and beat down his whole family. And so Rip takes a frying pan and freaking clocks the heck out of his dad, and then is to just run off afterwards. To have young John Dutton come in and basically find him in some like hangar place somewhere, and now we get to where John is to just take Rip in, but is to tell him it's like, well, hey, like all I'm gonna need from you is a little bit of pain, and you can come with me and work with me. So we transition to have Rip going and telling John about what had happened, about the bear dead and the two tourists' body found. It's kind of crazy because when the sheriff comes in, like the sheriff is to say that he doesn't give a about these tourists. He just cares about this bear because he's gonna get all kinds of letters from all kinds of people uh, about this whole bear situation and how they did and how this bear was killed. And weirdly, they are to say that Rip is to hunt down this bear and have it be like a hunting season kind of thing. And John's like, no, like this bear has it's been on my land and it's starting to terrorize my cattle, and it's been consistently on my land, so I thought I would deal with it. So now we have to go and have Rip tell us the story of exactly where he was from the bear, and so on and so forth. And so the sheriff is just having a bone to pick with John, desperately just wanting to, one way or another, just get one of his people, whether it's his family or arrested. Like, as if somebody's kind of paying this guy off to just like, like, I'm going to go and try to get one of these people just off of John's land, so to speak. So now Rip is to go off back to the barn to wait for one of the officers to show up. And so when Rip goes with this girl to kind of go on this horseback, all of a sudden he ends up seeing this horse bug upon her butt of this horse. Not her actual butt, the butt of the horse. So Rip is trying to convince this girl, like, hey, like, you should probably deal with that. You should probably deal with that. Like, hey, like, or your horse is just going to go wildly off. So she does nothing. She doesn't believe him. Like, man, Rip is just like, man, you kill a bear and everybody turns on you because those people fell, but I guess they just find Rip very suspicious, like as if he's lying to people. So this girl goes racing off with her horse, falls off her horse onto this fencing railing and gets freaking like skewered through the chest, sadly. So Rip is to demand that the officer give him give him his. I was thinking of the terms here. Give him the pistol, give him the gun, so he can shoot the horse and then go and try to pull this thing not from out of the woman, but from out of the ground, so that way she can kind of move around a little bit more, so that way they can try to figure out how to take care of this wound, because if they completely pull it out of her, she's going to die quickly, immediately, whatever. So the girl won't give up her gun, and so now Rip has to go and carefully uh, disconnect this barbed wire from this horse so this horse can go off. And then Rip is to kind of disconnect the barbed wire to this girl, and so then he is to pull this thing out from of course the ground. And so now they're kind of sitting waiting for this helicopter to go and pick her up. So when Rip comes back to talk to John, uh, they say that they're going to end up having another officer out here the next day. So, and I kind of want to cover everything here, so we'll like that's how I always like to do anything. I like to focus on one person and finish off their story, and like so like if it perfectly doesn't coalesce or doesn't like if it covers 2 episodes, then this is 2 episodes of content. Like it's gonna be unperfectly done. Each one of these episodes are like 40 some odd minutes, so I would recommend watching these 2 episodes anyways. So because it's easy. So Rip goes on to have this other officer come on in, and John is to now have to like showcase where Rip had quite possibly been at and where the bullets had gone or the bullet casings had gone. And so it seems like they couldn't find the bullet casings for where they were to be dropped. And so coincidentally we have the sheriff who had the casings all along. And now John is a little irritated because the sheriff was trying to hide something from him. And so John is like, who's hiding things from, like, who's paying you off to kind of like what's really going on here. So it seems like they're starting to sniff around to go and grab Jenkins and take him. But let's get to something. Let's get to something here. So, because the other officer claims that Rip was to have been like a self-defense thing, and what had happened with those 2 people had been an accident. Everything's fine. So Casey is, let's cover Casey's stuff so we can kind of full circle this whole thing. So Casey is to it's seemingly tempted, of course, to rejoin the military, whether it's like, because I think Monica was to say that supposedly Casey was in the Navy, but I think that might have been whatever kind of story. So Casey is to go and meet with Monica, and before he does, Monica is to go and do rehab, trying to learn to walk again. And so while she's doing that, she talks with Felix Long, and is to mention that I think she wants to go and live with him instead of going back to live with Casey. And so he's like, well, like, shouldn't you go back to your husband? And she's like, because it seems like this relationship is going to start to fizzle out, I guess, sadly enough. So, or like something, but so we'll see where this all goes. We'll see where this all heads. So, when Casey is to pick Monica up, Monica is to tell Casey, like, hey, like, if anything, I just really right now want you to go. Like, like, I think it's the best for us, and like, uh, and so like we have these people with this conversation that is to be had here, where it's basically telling them that like they need a break or they need something, whether it's divorce papers, I don't know, that's way too soon. Maybe they just need like some time to themselves for a little bit, to just kind of assess things, because there's just a lot of piling up like things that are just have been going on. So Casey decides to go back to the ranch, but while he is to go and get some gas somewhere, all of a sudden there is to be a guy that approaches him to ask him for 10 bucks worth of gas. And Casey's like, "You don't need gas." Like, and so this guy all of a sudden is to pull a knife on Casey, and so Casey goes and defends himself, but then just starts beating this guy to a bloody pulp just because, like, dude, you messed with this guy on the wrong day. So Casey is just starting to beat this guy down, beat him down to where he's now unconscious, but he's still beating him up. So the sheriff is to be called. Casey is to, of course, be arrested because he went too far beating up somebody. So Casey goes on to the ranch, and so Casey is to tell John, it's like, well, hey, like, there's nowhere else really for Casey to go, and so he might as well just come back to this ranch. And he might as well just start working for his dad. And because all that Casey is to really matter right now is that he needs to provide for his son. And that's the only thing that sticks into his mind. So while Monica is to be back at her home with her grandparents, Tate is going and crying in against this fence. Monica, who had went out there to eventually have uh, Felix come out and kind of tell her, like, hey, whenever you want to come back in, and then shortly thereafter she wants to come back in, and she is to just sit out there just being all just sad with Tate crying and whatever. So because Monica is to go and talk a little to Tate about things. But anyways, we let's get to the Jamie stuff. So, but wait, let's finish the Casey thing. So Casey is to go and be this new hand to help John. And so Casey is to help get Jenkins and to put him in one of their vehicles. And so they string up Jenkins, and they of course noose him. And so they're trying to squeeze him for information. And so Casey is to find out that the whole pilot episode intro, where John was going to get into this accident and so on and so forth, that was all Jenkins doing. I was like, oh my god, we're pulling it all the way back to the pilot episode where that whole accident and whatever. That was kind of interesting. So Jenkins is to kind of like reveal like some information and stuff like that. And so Casey is to pull the horse from under Jenkins, and Casey's to just tell these guys to let Jenkins just hang. Just let him die. So that's the tail end of Casey for this season. We also have this weird, bizarre thing when Casey goes into the place, and Avery's to look at Casey and just be like, that guy. To just be like, well, is there probably some history there? I'm sure there probably is. Is it just a matter of time before we reveal that history? Probably in the next season. So let's cover some Jamie stuff. So with the whole Rip situation, where Rip, of course, was to have supposedly murdered a bear and might have been almost spending some jail time, but luckily nothing came through with that. John was calling Jamie all day long, just like Jamie, I need you. Like Jamie, like drop everything you're doing, Jamie. Like man, because of John, like Jamie has no life whatsoever. No wonder he doesn't have a woman until now. Um, for however long that's possibly going to last. Because all of a sudden we might find out that this woman might have been a plant sent by somebody. Or like I'm assuming that the relationship with Jamie and this girl is not going to last, or there might be some ruse behind all of this. I just don't think that this is a legitimate thing. Or, like, is this girl possibly manipulating Jamie? We'll find out upon next season. If a lot of people are interested in this, I'll keep talking about it and whatever. So, Jamie is to go back to the ranch to have not even checked his messages and is to come back to the ranch going like, hey, what's going on? John is to be so upset with Jamie, like not dropping everything that he is to do to fix whatever John's problem was for this week was, that now John is to basically tell Jamie that he's pulling out of the race. Because John needs him too much here for John to be campaigning or whatever the heck that he wants to do. And Jamie's like, no, like, this was mine. Like, I earned this. Like, out of all the things that I've ever done for you, like, I have earned this. And so then all of a sudden gets a fight between Jamie and John where, like, Jamie is fighting and punching his father, and John continues to, like, freaking drop or trip or whatever, Jamie knocking him down. And so they're fighting it out. I'm like, oh my god, like this is crazy. But like, I think this was something that was like building up for a while to just have like Jamie just be like, what else do you want, Dad? What else do you need? What else? Like, how many times like does it seem that Jamie doesn't have a life on this show besides his time with Beth or his time with doing some legal argument like thing for whatever reason? Like, so now with Jamie possibly being supposedly free from this house, because that's what he's to do, is to finally just pull the plug and just be like, no, like, I'm not gonna go and do what they want anymore. I'm done with this. Like, so, and so is John. John is to tell, like, Jamie, like, hey, like, get off my ranch, like, you don't live here anymore. And so Jamie goes off and is to go to a hotel somewhere, and because Rip is kind of telling him to cool off. So Jamie decides to just finally just pull the ripcord on this family, and he decides, you know what, like we can still do this if Jamie has some backing from certain people, but Jamie is to also realize that there's no way that he can run against his father, and John's pockets are probably deeper than Jamie's are, or it'll be interesting to see where Jamie goes to find certain people that will help him out, or possibly Jamie will just do this on his own. So Jamie is to go on with Christina, and tell him it's like, you know what, like, when has it ever been that you have done something for yourself? Never? So, like, Christina and Jamie, like, are to have this moment in this campaign place where no one else is there, where she is to go and kiss him and make out with him and whatever, cementing that, like, that he should go and do this for himself. So we also have Nagayan, who we find out is actually some like reporter in disguise, and that when Jamie is to go on television and do this whole like interview, it seems like Sarah Nagayan is to realize that why is it that every single problem that is to be Jamie's problem is like his father's problem? Like, why does he have to take every single thing on? Like, why isn't just John running for this then? Like, so when Jamie is, of course, to seemingly be pushed out of the race, we then in turn have Jamie turn around and have both the governor and the current attorney general forcing out John from his position, because they're like, you know what, like, with all of everything that's kind of going on, like, there's a lot of accusations being thrown around right now, so they're kind of forcing John out of his position of livestock commissioner, and John is to say, it's like, well, you go and find the person that can do this job better than me. Go and find that person who is going to beat me in being this. You won't find them. So, like, no, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to resign. I'm going to continue to do this. And so John is to go off and just start to, like, do certain tasks in the farm. And Rip is to turn to him and is like, hey, like, we do have people for that. And so John is like, well, hey, like, I just needed something to do. Like, I think John just needed something at that moment to take his mind off of what's going on. And working in the barn was just that. So that's when kind of John confesses to Rip that he may not be, excuse me, he might be on a timetable of how long he is to really have left to live. And so John is to say that he needs to go and quickly resolve all of everything, all of his problems before he is to die, basically. So John is telling Rip that. And so John goes and has Beth set up to basically be his new Jamie, which I'm like, oh my god, I'm loving this. This is great. Like, so Beth is trying to figure out, like, what's all going on because she's not being told stuff. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, John's running around and telling other people, like, what's going on. And Beth is to go to Rip and say, hey, what's going on? And Rip's not saying anything. And so if I were Beth, I would just be like, you know what? Like, if you're not going to, like, be straight with me and tell me everything, then I am going to sell your freaking table. I'm going to sell your table. That's what we get at the end of this season. Beth telling John that right to his face. Just, yeah, it's gruesome, but I can understand where Beth's side of things is when she's not being told things and she's just to magically come up with a brand new Jamie for John, because John is to realize that all of the lawyer stuff that Jamie had done and known and whatever, he is the only one in town that could have done all the stuff all in one fell swoop, where John would have had to hire a number of lawyers to do a number of this stuff, and Beth is figuring that out because Beth is not a actual lawyer because she hasn't technically passed the bar. But when Beth is to come to Jamie and just be like, hey, give me your credit card, give me your keys, give me everything, give me the life that you used to have, kinda. So Jamie is to give Beth all of those things, and Beth is to basically tell Jamie, like, dude, you're not going to win this whole ordeal. You're not going to win this position. I should probably go and take one of these cups, or maybe I should just go on wait till I can find it at a yard sale for a quarter because this is a joke. Like, this isn't real. So but we'll just kind of see where John is to break down when he needs possibly Jamie in his life, because there's going to be a lot of problems that are going to arise where Beth may not have the answer for, so we'll see what happens with that. So Jamie is to go and have Christina ask him, it's like, well, how do you feel after that moment just happened? And Jamie's like, I feel free. Like, I feel better. Like, it feels like he's gonna celebrate this whole moment, that he's like now disconnected from these people and he now doesn't have to deal with their anymore. So Jamie should throw a parade. Like, yeah, I can have my own story on the show. On top of that, freaking heck yeah, like I'm no longer attached or tied to this family. Yeah. Have a freaking parade being thrown for Jamie, just because he's like, yeah, I get my own story, that's not completely consistently tied with certain characters of this family because I'm now disconnected from them. So I like, it's kind of interesting because if it were to have not actually been a family member of John's, this guy probably would have been sent to the train station and probably would have been killed. But it's Jamie, so yeah, like, they're just gonna have to at some point mend fences, but that'll take some real process, because when Jamie is to push out John out of his job, uh, John is to go to Jamie and is to tell him because Jamie's at the ranch. And John's like, wow, Jamie, you're a real politician. Like, good luck on that job because you're going to be really good at it. Because it's like, hey, if John is going to push Jamie out, Jamie's going to try to do the same thing to him. And so so we have it where Jamie is to go and talk to Sarah Nagayan, and so Sarah Nagayan is to finally reveal who she really is, and is to say that she's a reporter, and she is trying as best that she can to try and bring John down, and she wants help from somebody. So she's going to get help from Jamie, because Jamie is to go and sit next to Sarah and is to reveal John's secrets in this whole interview. And so Sarah is to say that more than likely this will actually help Jamie get this this attorney general job, or it probably will land him into prison forever. Who knows? But because Sarah is not thinking about like what is to happen to Jamie after this is all said and done. All she cares about is getting this story. And so Sarah's going to make all these promises that she can't fulfill, and she's going to say whatever she wants to get whatever she wants out of this. And so Jamie is just going to be a footnote to her, sadly. And I'm just worried about what's going to happen to Jamie after this whole thing is revealed. And so we'll see how this all plays out. So, but like, I like the fact that Jamie is to just like, he's to want to feel free, but now he's really going to like unload all of this stuff, unload everything, tell his story. Kind of like when the one guy was to leave the United, or the Queen's family. The one guy, the one prince, he had gone on and decided to leave with his wife, and then they had their whole like, oh, we need the exclusive story of all these characters and so on and so forth, and the whole family and whatever, and the whole ordeal, why they left, so on and so forth. So many exclusives, so many, like the book is coming out soon, I'm sure. So, the tell-all. So, that kind of goes and covers most of the stuff with Jamie. So now let's cover like the rest of the stuff with Beth in these episodes. So, but I want to make sure that I've kind of covered most of my bases here. Like there is some stuff with the hands of course this show, but like it's very like small things here and there. Like Jimmy is to get a new hat, and then he ends up going and putting, I think, his hat on his bed, which I guess is bad luck. There's no way to reverse that. Walker is to go and talk to Rip and mention that Walker doesn't want to bend the law or break the law to help out this ranch. Like, he didn't get into this job to do that kind of thing. And so Rip is to basically just tell Walker, it's like, well, hey, like, you're going to be here for a long time, so like, you have basically like the time that you could have left has expired by now, so you're like, it's either you're leaving or you're leaving in a body bag. So Walker goes off and is to start spending time with Beth, because why not take off Rip, right? Because Beth is to go and talk to Rip about what's going on, and Rip's not saying anything. So both Beth and Rip are kind of talking about their relationship now, and how like they weren't exclusive and so on and so forth. So Beth goes off and is to just find Walker, and I wonder if this is some like legitimate relationship happening, or is it just that Beth is to just like, I would have found anybody else that wasn't Rip and gone with said Walker. But so Walker is to talk with Beth and is to mention how this feels like an evil place, because that's the weird vibe that Walker is to give off, that this is a very evil place. And like every time he talks, it seems that like more than likely he might be rubbing some people the wrong way. But I don't know. We'll see how that breaks down, and we'll see if Walker ends up going to the train station sometime soon. So Beth is to go and talk to Walker and So while they're talking and talking about how bad this place is and so on and so forth, Walker goes and rips Beth's shirt to kind of see where her brand is, and Beth is to mention that her brand is on the inside. I'm like, all right, that's one way. Like, yeah, because like mentally, I'm sure that this ranch has left a scar here or there because of what of all has been kind of compressed over time. Um, so all of a sudden we have Beth and Walker kind of hooking up, supposedly. Where that's gonna go, not quite sure. I think there were just two people that needed one another at this specific time. So we'll see how that plays out. We also had Beth, who was to really go on and give Jenkins' wife. Beth goes to Jenkins' home and is to meet up with uh, Beth's wife, like somewhere in the streets somewhere. And so Jenkins' wife was Veronica or Victoria. I think it's Victoria. She is to go and put her hairstyle looking very much like Beth and say that Victoria was inspired by Beth. So Beth has her and Victoria go off to Jenkins' house and has her mess around with uh, this girl's assistant. And so when Jenkins goes home, he sees that Victoria is in her panties and just kind of messing around with this younger guy. And so Jenkins, seeing that, just starts to just walk off. And so Beth is to sit next to Jenkins. And so Jenkins is to say, like, man, like, I regret ever meeting you or ever talking to you. I regret ever knowing you, kind of thing. Like, we get that far. And so, because Beth is to say, it's like, man, like, destroying you was so easy. Like, and it was, like, so, like, sadly easy. And Beth is just to churn and burn the fact that Jenkins is going to have to go and ask for some kind of funds from his friends to just kind of keep this going. And so it'll be kind of interesting where Jenkins kind of heads into the second season. If he heads anywhere at all, if he is to be dead by the second season, because he is to be hung by a noose by the last time we see him. So if he dies, then, well, Rainwater is going to have to go and find another partner somewhere out of nowhere. So we'll see where that goes. So yeah, so both Jenkins and Beth have this like really uh just kind of horrible moment between one another that just kind of like just shows how much they hate one another. And Beth just had this mission of just taking Jenkins out. So we'll see where that all heads. We'll see where that heads. So because Jenkins was to go and continue to talk to Rainwater about that whole deal, they golfed about it, and Jenkins is to just kind of mention how he wants to put together this casino, which is to jack up uh, the tax of John's house to make it too expensive for him to be able to afford to live there anymore because he won't have $11 million. So that's their plan of trying to drive John out and trying to buy the ranch some way or another to get John eventually to leave here, you would think then that John would just have the nuclear option of just leaving. That he would just go somewhere else, have some other land, start brand new again, sell this ranch to someone else, and then get the heck out of there before things are to go the way they are. But again, John wants to keep this ranch because he worked so hard on it. And so it's kind of this tug and pull kind of thing of like, well, he wants to keep this to give it to his family because of how well it's like been put together, but yeah, yeah, we'll see where that heads. We'll see how that all fizzles out. So, with that said, I think I've covered most of the stuff that happens in this episode. I'm sure there's still a bunch of crap that I didn't still bring up, or a bunch of stuff that I didn't bring up. Uh, but I think I covered most of these 2 episodes. And plus, I did it in just like, I'm going to focus on one person and just talk about that whole thing. So, with that said, I kind of feel good about all that I've covered. And whether that means that people will be interested with these reviews after this thing is over, we'll see. So, I don't think anybody would probably watch this whole video, but if you did, thank you. I do appreciate it. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here, and we'll see if people are interested in season 2, if there seems to be still views after this first season is over, then I'll continue doing this. If it seems that there seems to be no views after this moment, then I guess I'll just kind of just say, all right, well, I can just go on and do other shows, other things, whatever. So I'm going to get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy. All right. So one thing of rebuttal. There was to be the point where, of course, Beth was to talk to John, and John is at the dinner table, and there used to be that the whole dinner table was full of people. Now there's no one but him and Beth, and so John is to mention that he just wants to keep the table and keep the table there and keep the table working. And that's all that really matters. It doesn't matter how many family members are still there. It just matters that there is to seemingly be a fully functional table for someone to sit there. So Beth is to go and walk off and walk outside, and because John had left the whole entire ranch to Beth and told her never to sell it and never give it to Casey for him to just sell it. So always keep it in the family. So Beth is to go outside and is to tell John, well, hey, like, if you go on and die, I am going to, right off the bat, go and take that table that you have so talked about, and I'm going to sell it. Metaphorically meaning that Beth is not going to think twice about selling that entire ranch off to somebody and then going off and doing whatever she wants after that. And so, with that said, where it's like, man, that's kind of a brutal thing to say, but we're really looking at it when you have everybody in this family that is one way or the other just like have really put up with John for as long as they can stand it, to where now that he's to be gone, like they're all going to move on and do what they were to be meant to do, but they are to be held by John and his money for them to just like stay where they're at, because John is to basically force them to stay there for one reason or another. And we're starting to really just see right here at the end of this season that John doesn't have the pull that he has anymore. He can't force these people to do what he wants anymore. And we're starting to see that unravel, so to speak. That everyone is going to go off and do whatever they want, and feel that freedom of having that ability to just go off and do so. So with that said, I think everything's covered. I think everything, I just wanted to get that out of the way because I referenced it, but I actually didn't go in depth about it. Uh, but yeah, because John was to talk to Rip and was to mention, like, yeah, there's not going to be a person to leave this ranch too, before John is to actually die. So yeah. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.